Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. The president is speaking at this hour in Rochester, Minnesota. Of course, we'll be watching that speech, and we'll go right to it if news happens, and it may. A lot has changed in the past 3 weeks, as you may have noticed. We've watched slack-jawed as professional lawmakers attacked the rule of law. We've heard self-described anti-racism activists embrace full-throated racism on television. We've seen people who call themselves advocates for women destroy the life of an actual woman for political gain. The country is all but inverted during the debate over Brett Kavanaugh's nomination. It is bewildering. In case you're having trouble keeping track of it all, a reminder that it was only a week ago that Democrats argued that a second Senate hearing into Brett Kavanaugh's high school record, the one we saw, was not enough to find the truth. We needed a supplementary FBI investigation, and we needed it immediately.
There needs to be an FBI investigation.
The FBI is an agency of sworn, trained law enforcement officers. They have the ability to do an investigation.
Have the independent professionals of the FBI actually investigate.
She has a right to have those facts be developed by a nonpartisan source like the FBI, who are expert.
An FBI investigation is the only way to answer some of these questions.
Well, it always struck us as a mindless demand, despite all the hysterical demands for it. Everyone involved had already given sworn statements under the penalty of perjury about what they knew about this story. The two people at the very center of it had already testified before the Congress on television. Brett Kavanaugh's life had been the subject of 6 previous FBI probes. Not only was he cleared in all 6 of them, he was given access to America's nuclear codes. So we knew all we were going to know about an event that supposedly took place 37 years ago. And that's why the FBI said it had zero interest in getting involved again. And yet Democrats demanded a new investigation anyway, as you just saw. And then protesters screamed at poor Jeff Flake in an elevator in the Senate until he agreed with the Democrats. So we got the investigation. It was supposed to take a week. Everyone agreed on that. But it wrapped up in 6 days. Why? Because there was nothing to find. And almost 4 decades after the fact, there were very few people left to interview. Not surprisingly, in the end, the FBI did not corroborate Christine Ford's story. You know what that means, don't you? The FBI must be involved in a cover-up. Yes, a diabolical secret plot orchestrated with their very close allies in the Trump administration. That's what they're telling us. The very people who just days ago were telling us that the FBI is an ethically unimpeachable organization, the ultimate tiebreaker. Now, the FBI is part of the deep state.
The investigation was very limited.
This report is blatantly and clearly incomplete.
Our fears have been realized. Our fears have been realized. This is not a thorough investigation.
In your view, is this a fulsome and credible investigation?
It's obviously a cover-up. Our fears have been realized. The FBI is working with the Trump administration. They always have been. It's a plot so secret, we believe the opposite is happening. How's that for clever? Others on the left say now what we really need is for Brett Kavanaugh to take a polygraph exam, because those are accepted by science. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina pointed out that the lie detector likely just the first demand in a long list. Watch.
You've humiliated this guy enough, and they said he's at the bottom for some of you. So why don't we dunk him in water and see if he floats? Maybe you'll believe he lied about how much he drank in high school, that he threw ice in a party, in a bar, or he doesn't have the temperament, that he didn't handle being destroyed well. Enough already. Let's vote.
Why don't we just dunk him in water and see if he floats? It was good enough in medieval France. You know the truth. Only one thing will truly be good enough: an investigation of some kind, or maybe a water dunking of some kind that lasts at least through January 3rd, 2019. That's when the new Congress will be sworn in. Of course, that's the real goal. It always has been. Fortunately, it looks like this ploy is failing. Win or lose, Kavanaugh's nomination will be voted on, it looks like, within a few days. It seems likely he'll be confirmed, but who knows? And we won't know until the moment the last vote is cast. Still, it's worth thinking about what the world looks like once this is all over, after Kavanaugh's confirmation vote. This is a new country now. What will it look like? Well, the left has accused President Trump of overturning norms and destroying institutions. But as always, that is pure projection. Whatever they're accusing you of is exactly what they're doing. And it's true in this case, too. The left just mounted a full assault on our justice system. They thought nothing of tossing out the presumption of innocence. You saw actual U.S. senators say things like, the accused has an obligation to prove himself innocent. They said that out loud. And then they tried to use the FBI as a weapon against their political opponents, and not for the first time. The Obama administration did the same. Think this will stop? Think again. Thought leaders, to the extent that's not an oxymoron on the left, are already laying the groundwork to pack the courts, something that hasn't been tried since the 1930s. Adding more Democrats to change the balance, the least democratic, small d democratic option available. It's only fair, they'll tell you, to offset the theft of Merrick Garland's seat on the Supreme Court, and of course, the appointment of a teenage sex offender. Going forward, look for the left to delegitimize any decisions written by Brett Kavanaugh from the court, or even any decisions in which he is the majority. Some states may just decide to ignore the Supreme Court. Sound far-fetched to you? Maybe, maybe not. Look what's happening in California right now. Lawmakers in that state, the largest state in the union, have already made it a crime for citizens in California to assist in the enforcement of any federal immigration law. California is, in effect, in open revolt against the laws of the United States. Suppose the Supreme Court were to try to crack down on that. It's not impossible to imagine California simply refusing to comply because Brett Kavanaugh sits on the court. Its edicts are illegitimate. That could happen. And that, by the way, is what crisis actually looks like. So get ready for that. Before we get to our first guest, we do have a Fox News alert for you. Brett Kavanaugh wrote an op-ed published in the Wall Street Journal literally a few seconds ago. Here's a selection from it, and we're quoting now. I was very emotional last Thursday, more so than I have ever been. I might have been too emotional at times. I know that my tone was sharp, and I've said a few things I should not have said. I hope everyone can understand that I was there as a son, husband, and dad. I testified with 5 people foremost in my mind: my mom, my dad, my wife, and most of all, my daughters. Going forward, you can count on me to be the same kind of judge and person I have been for my entire 28-year legal career. Hardworking, even-keeled, open-minded, independent, and dedicated to the Constitution and the public good. There's a lot more to that op-ed. We just tweeted out a link to the full piece just appearing in the Wall Street Journal. So there's that. Meanwhile, Joe DiGenova is, of course, a former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Danny Coulson is a former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI, and they both join us tonight. First to you, Joe. Do you think it's likely, as Democrats are now suggesting, that the FBI is in secret collusion with their very close allies in the Trump administration to subvert the will of the Democratic Party? Based on what we have been watching for the past 2 years, do you think that's a likely scenario?
Yes, well, I think what the Democrats are engaged in is something that we call the big lie. And what they've done is they have associated themselves with anarchy, and they are now in full revolt against the Constitution of the United States, the Union, and the rule of law. What you are hearing are the cries of an injured child, not unlike those of Ms. Ford when she testified before the committee as an injured adolescent. The Democratic Party is in full retreat from good government, the rule of law, and sanity. These people are crazed, seeking power, and there they are, calling into question the integrity of the FBI, who didn't want anything to do with this, and were asked to do it by Senator Coons and Senator Flake. Good Lord, they are appalling.
So, Danny Coulson, if you're one of the many FBI agents and employees who doesn't want the agency to become politicized or used as a weapon by a political party or other, what do you make of all this?
Well, I think that they don't like the result. That's very, very simple. I said when the investigation began that you'll get your investigation, but you may not like what they find out. And what they found out is not only was there not corroboration of Dr. Ford's story, the important thing is her story was rejected by her own witnesses. And I think that's very difficult for the Democratic Party to handle. The FBI doesn't really care how these things come out. That's why there was so much aversion to James Comey's record as the director. They want to be known as independent. We want to be fact finders, and they do today. And I will tell you, they did not parse this investigation. They did a thorough investigation, and just because you like it doesn't mean it's not valid. And I think that's what we're dealing with here. Is if you don't like the results, then attack the investigative agency, and I don't think it's going to play out very well.
So what I think what you just heard Mr. Coulson say, Joe DiGenova, is from the FBI perspective, they don't have a moral obligation to prove true the spotty 37-year-old memories of Christine Ford in order to stop Brett Kavanaugh. They don't see that as their duty?
Indeed they don't, and they shouldn't, and Danny's absolutely correct. This is an example of what happens when a party decides to uproot itself from the rule of law, from decency and honesty and integrity. They have destroyed themselves. They are hurting innocent people, a man, his family. The confirmation process is in shambles as a result of the conduct of Senator Feinstein and Senator Booker and Senator Harris and the little man from Delaware, Senator Coons, whose blathering, fake lawyering has become an embarrassment to the Senate. But that's where we are. So what do? They attack the FBI. The FBI is a great institution, notwithstanding James Comey's leadership.
Right.
They remain a great institution today.
So really quick, Danny Coulson, do you think Democrats are saying, well, Kavanaugh needs to take a polygraph exam? Is it even within the realm of possibility that he heads over to FBI HQ and takes a polygraph exam? What does that even mean?
Well, I totally reject that. If I were doing the investigation, and I used to run these investigations with the FBI, and in no way is this a case where you'd want a polygraph. I've seen the polygraphs be successful. I've seen them fail miserably. Right. This is a matter of credibility, and we have the ability as human beings to adjudicate credibility. We do it every day in our life. Courts do it, juries do it, we all do it. And it's pretty simple, really.
Thank you for the reminder of that. We don't need a machine to reach conclusions. Thank you both very much. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Well, for months it seemed like the Republicans could be in deep trouble in the upcoming midterm elections. Has that changed? Has the Brett Kavanaugh nomination process awakened Republicans and changed the fortunes of the party? It's possible. We'll have a full analysis of that next. Plus, the president speaking live in Rochester, Minnesota tonight. We're monitoring what's happened there. And, of course, we'll go there immediately if news arrives.
South Carolina, North Carolina. And they're coming in to a place called Minnesota. Do we love Minnesota?
It has looked like the 2018 midterms next month were going to be pretty tough on Republicans, or at least they'd be argued over the president. Trump's economy, his immigration policies, tax cuts, his tweets. But at the last moment, a new issue has emerged and completely transformed the political calculation. Of course, it's the Brett Kavanaugh nomination. Democrats are angry about it. They're fired up in opposition to Kavanaugh. But even more important could be the reaction of many Republicans, who are every bit as mad. In some cases, they're madder, and they're uniting behind the nominee. It's a complicated question, so we have asked to talk to one of our favorite correspondents, Jillian Turner, who has the numbers. Jillian, what is the answer here?
So, Tucker, for months, all the D.C. pollsters have been telling us the Democrats are revved up for the November midterms and they're ready to crush Republicans. But now, a whole slew of new polls this week are turning that conventional wisdom on its head and showing conservatives of all stripes are fired up. The give isn't the Mueller investigation or tax cuts or regulatory reform. Party leaders say it's Brett Kavanaugh.
The defining issue in 2018 has changed. It's about this.
A new Marist poll shows the enthusiasm gap between Republicans and Democrats shrinking by the day. Just 2 months ago, there was a 10-point gap between Dem and Republicans' interest in the midterms, but now that playing field's leveled off. Compared to early September, the number of Republicans who say they feel extremely interested in the elections is up by 2 points in Arizona, 9 points in Indiana, 8 points in Missouri and North Dakota, and up 11 points in Tennessee. Meanwhile, a new round of Fox News battleground poll shows the fight for the Senate trending Republican, with the Kavanaugh showdown on Capitol Hill stoking interest in the midterms from Republicans all across the board. All 5 states surveyed showed an uptick in GOP interest. Incumbent Senate Democrats' votes on Kavanaugh could tip tight races, especially in Missouri and North Dakota, and voting against his nomination will hurt more than help the Democratic candidates in those states. While it's true Supreme Court fights rile up both parties' bases, this fight is strictly bad news for candidates running against the partisan grain of their constituents.
Whether you're a Trump Republican, a Bush Republican, a McCain Republican, a libertarian, or a vegetarian, you're pissed. I've never seen the Republican Party so unified as I do right now.
The National Republican Congressional Committee tells Fox News Republicans are voting with their dollars, too. They say from August to September, their donations are up 175%, with the average individual gift up by 111%. No one can say for sure, Tucker, that all of this hype's due exclusively to Kavanaugh, but all signs point to yes. Tucker?
Sure seems that way. Jillian Turner, thank you very much for that.
You got it.
Brian Dean Wright is a former CIA officer and a Democrat. He recently wrote a really interesting piece in which he warned that his party's approach to the Kavanaugh nomination could turn out to be a problem for them in November. Brian Dean Wright joins us tonight. Brian, this is a really interesting piece that you wrote. I want to read out loud. I don't have it on the screen in front of me, but you said, this is part of a strategy attacking Kavanaugh, obviously. The progressive strategies work quite brilliantly. The media have been relentless in backing Ford in her claims with rapid response to outrage if anyone dared to challenge Ford's facts or insist on careful due process. Meanwhile, Kavanaugh has been vilified successfully as a rich, drunken, lying gang rapist. One media outlet suggested he's actually a pedophile. All of that is true. All of that would seem to work. I mean, it's totally immoral, but it seems to work politically for the Democrats. What's the downside, do you think, for them?
Well, we're seeing it in the polls and the fantastic recap that we just heard. Certainly, the Republican base is getting riled up, and rightfully so. But we're also seeing independents. If you really break down some of these polls, a lot of that movement, especially in the generic poll, is independents. They're either splitting a little bit more towards Republicans or notably more so towards Republicans. And we're seeing that across all age groups, and also particularly white folks without college educations. So in other words, that's the Trump coalition. So the Trump coalition is coming home this November. That's what it looks like to me.
So I'm not sure why. So you point out in the piece that Democrats knew from the very beginning that they're unlikely to block this nomination because they don't control the U.S. Senate. So, but this isn't the only strategy they might have employed. What's really going on is they're mad about his views on Roe v. Wade. Okay, I disagree, but that's a point of view. Why not argue that in public? Wouldn't you get more in the end if you stood up for your own principles instead of just trying to destroy a guy on the basis of high school stuff?
Well, here's the part that, as an American, forgive being a Democrat, but as an American, that outrages me over this strategy. My party used, let's believe her, Professor Ford, a sexual assault victim. We used her to achieve a political aim, a political goal to destroy the Republicans and the president. That is horrific. So if we're going to have a debate in this country about things like Roe v. Wade or tax policies or whatever it might be, gay rights, etc., let's have that forthright.
Exactly.
Let's not drag somebody through the mud like we did with Ms. Ford. We certainly could have had this investigation the first part of August. We didn't. We chose to drop it out in the middle of September to make this even more horrific. And we're getting exactly what we deserve, which is we're getting hit in the polls.
You're totally right. It'd be better. Let's have a real debate. I mean, that's the point of this whole show. I believe in debate. Brian, thank you very much.
You bet, sir.
Just the other day, we talked to Alan Dershowitz about the ACLU calling Kavanaugh a rapist without providing evidence that he is. Watch.
In America, we don't allow people to destroy other people's reputations and careers based on an inference of guilt the way the ACLU now says. The ACLU says we should presume guilt, not presume innocence.
An ACLU representative here to defend that ad after the break. Plus, we'll take you there.
We've taken historic action to make health care more affordable. And we've gotten rid of the soaring premiums. You know, the premiums on Obamacare, nobody realized it. They were going up 116%, 138%, 200% through great management and great people. We've kept them down. We've mostly obliterated Obamacare, although we had it won except for 2 o'clock in the morning.
Years by defending due process and free speech, especially for deeply unpopular people. That long and noble tradition is over now in the name of left-wing solidarity. The ACLU has been running an ad likening Brett Kavanaugh to Bill Cosby, even though they have literally nothing in common. Of course, Kavanaugh has not even been tried. Here it is.
We've seen this before, denials from powerful men.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I've never seen anything like this.
I categorically and unequivocally deny the allegation against me by Dr. Ford.
America is watching, and as we choose a lifetime seat on our highest court, integrity matters, and we cannot have any doubt. Senator Gardner, oppose the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh.
Fayez Shakir is the ACLU's national political director, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Shakir, thank you for coming on.
Hi, Tucker. Thank you.
This is a disgusting ad, obviously, but what's so distressing is that you ran it, because this is guilt by association, the very thing the ACLU nobly stood against during, for instance, the blacklist period. Bill Cosby and Brett Kavanaugh have nothing in common, and you twin them in order to discredit Kavanaugh. How could you do that as the ACLU?
So appreciate your comments, Tucker. The common thread here, of course, is powerful men whose careers are on the line issuing denials about sexual wrongdoing. And in this instance, we believe that the denial issued by Brett Kavanaugh goes right to integrity, a position that he's applying for on the Supreme Court in which he sits in judgment of the rest of the nation. Integrity is of the critical importance, the utmost importance.
Okay,
and we have doubt about his integrity.
I agree, and I would never argue against the importance of integrity. Okay. But Bill Cosby has been convicted of crimes in court. He went through the legal process, the one that the ACLU, before it was taken over by partisans like you, once defended. Brett Kavanaugh has not been. So putting them together is by definition guilt by association and unfair. Do you think that the person in your position 20 years ago would have seen that?
Tucker, this isn't a civil or criminal trial. I think you understand that. We're talking about a job promotion assessment.
No, that's the point I'm making.
The standard of proof here is not a beyond a reasonable doubt assessment.
So then why did you put him next to Bill Cosby, who has been tried and convicted?
He is not entitled to the presumption of innocence. If you assume that, you're saying he's entitled to the job on the Supreme Court.
I'm sorry, but I'm not actually... No, but hold on. I'm not arguing that. I'm asking you why you put him next to a man who was tried in court and convicted of felonies and sentenced to prison.
Because that individual,
as you just noted, hasn't done any of those things.
That individual also denied the accusations. I think you would appreciate, Tucker, that we're criticizing people on the left and the right.
I don't care about the left and the right. I care about the principles that make the country worth living in, which you once defended and now you urinate on. Why not put him next to Charles Manson?
Sexual assault is to be taken very seriously here, Tucker, and I think that we're often crowding out the voices of women and believing the men and not believing women. In this case, this woman came forward under extreme difficult circumstances, and we should be believed.
Hold on, you're the ACLU. Hold on, you're the ACLU. You don't believe in collective judgment or collective punishment. You believe in the rights of... Let me just remind you what you believe, because I think I know more about your organization than you do. I just wrote a chapter of a book on the ACLU.
Okay. It's an individualized determination about this woman who came forward and offered credible...
Exactly. Thank you. Now you're back in reasonable mode. So why would you say it's about women being heard when, of course, it's not? It's about one woman making one allegation against one man. It's not about all women.
In those instances, there have been other men who've denied accusations before them that we've said. And all we're saying is that in this instance, like in previous instances, women deserve an opportunity to be heard.
But it's not about... Hold on. So you're endorsing collective judgment and collective punishment. Yes, you are. Do other women have nothing to do with it?
Sir, the judgment made against Kavanaugh is on the merits of the issues against Kavanaugh. He has not been honest and forthright. Chucker, I believe this, that had he come forward and said, listen, all of us were young at some point in life. We did something.
Okay, now you're just getting into fantasies. Let me ask you. Let me ask you something that I've wanted to ask you for a long time. The ACLU is the reason that the First Amendment was defined in the Clarence Brandenburg versus Ohio case of 1967. He was a Klansman, and you guys defended his right to speak, and that's why I have the right to say what I think is true. The ACLU has now decided they're not going to defend anybody they disagree with.
No, sir. I think we are defending right now.
Do you want me to read the quote to you?
Milo. We're defining. If you remember the Charlottesville case.
Do you want me to read the quote?
Name another group out there.
I'll tell you. We can refuse cases defending
with people on different ideological spectrums.
No,
the ACLU.
this is your new standard.
Tell me another group.
More than you're trying to shout me down because you know.
I'm trying to defend my principles here.
No. Let me read the memo from your group. We're not going to assist in cases that may advance the goals of white supremacists or others whose views are contrary to our values. If you're not defending people who are unpopular, who you disagree with, why do you still exist?
We absolutely defend the people. We are doing it right now. If you look at
you should be ashamed.
Look at a case in New York where we're defending the NRA, we look at a case where we're defending Milo.
Yeah. I mean, how about someone who's really unpopular? You made this country better. Now you're making it worse because you abandoned your principles, and you should be ashamed of yourself. And I mean that with total sincerity.
Tucker,
Thank you.
That's
no,
totally
it's not.
Unfair,
It's totally true. The left has tried to fire up women against Brett Kavanaugh. You just heard it. That could be backfiring. Conservative women are paying attention too, and some of them are every bit as mad. Tammy Bruce joins us to discuss that next. Plus, the president's still speaking in Rochester, Minnesota. We'll go there if he starts making news.
Now you have a president who is standing up for America more than ever before.
Kavanaugh is disqualified. Yeah! This is about hijacking our democracy. Let's be clear about this. I am angry. I own it. Stay focused. Stay focused. Move forward.
He was angry. He's partisan. I feel that he's unfit to serve. And I also am concerned about alcoholism.
He's a despicable human being, and he's a liar, and he thinks he's entitled to this position.
You heard that right. A group led by Linda Sarsour is concerned that Brett Kavanaugh doesn't have the right temperament. Our producer Alex Pfeiffer and a camera crew went down to D.C. today, braved all that to bring those pictures to you. That was a mob pressuring senators to unquestioningly believe the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh. Meanwhile, the author of the Vagina Monologues, which you haven't seen, probably shouldn't, lashing out at women of a certain skin color who support Brett Kavanaugh for some reason. In an open letter published by Time magazine, Eve Ensler suggests that white women who back Kavanaugh are deliberately supporting violent, abusive behavior. Quote, I don't think you want to apologize to your daughters 40 years from now, stop the ascension of a man who is angry, aggressive, and vengeful, and could very well be a sexual assaulter. Time is short. Call your senators, stop laughing, and start fighting. Tammy Bruce is a radio show host, president of Independent Women's Voice. She's been watching all of this very carefully. She joins us tonight. Tammy, what's your assessment?
Look, we're seeing something I think that's actually been pretty predictable. Hillary said at one point that women voted for Trump because their husbands told them to. Do you remember that big controversy? Well. Because she was relying on the women's vote to elect her as president, and the majority of white women, as the polls tend to categorize people, voted for Donald Trump. So in her explanation it's because those particular women clearly are zombies, right? They have no mind of their own, and maybe they're the Walking Dead. I don't know, but they certainly don't have personal agency. That was her message. And I contend with all of this, and I know you've been covering the issue about why has race been interjected into this. I contend that in fact now the Democrats have decided that they've got to figure out a way to divide even the households, to make women think that the men in their lives are the enemy. And so whether it is your husband or your son or your brother or your dad, that in fact men, white men in particular, because the white women's vote was the issue, are people you cannot trust. Now, of course, that's...
Like I say, that's a high cost, convincing people that